Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Jeff and Paper Gary. It is Saturday, January 17th, and a brisk 28 degrees outside. So I've got the heater warming up the garage in here. Hopefully it gets up to comfortable temperatures. It's not bad. As you can see, I'm in a t-shirt this morning. Going to continue pressing on with the riveting of the skeleton. So bringing you up to speed on some off-camera work that I did last night. A lot of it was just boring, reaming of holes, deburring of holes, dimpling of things. But some of it was setting the rivets on the leading edge spar of the horizontal stabilizer. I think we watched in the video, the previous video, the failed attempts at riveting with a rivet gun and folding over the tail ends of those rivets and having to drill them out. And that was a daunting task, just due to the area that they were in, because those ribs are in place. Really hard to get a drill in there. The second time doing it, I found a much better way, and that was to use the jobber bit. So I get the drill out of the way of the rib and able to get a more straight on and centered approach on the rivet head. So when you get into one of those situations where you can't fit your drill in there with a short drill bit, the standard drill bit, you may want to consider using that jobber bit, because that gets that drill motor out of the way of the rib. It also protects your rib, because the jaws of, or I guess the gears on the chuck where you turn those things in, man, when those grab the edge of a rib, they can do a lot of damage. So consider that when you have to drill out a rivet in a confined or a hard to reach place. The solution to that was to get my technical advisor over here. So thankfully, he was swinging by my place last night on his way to dinner, and he stopped in real quick to buck two rivets. And ultimately, it was a me problem, right, which I fully expected, trying to, or not able to hold the bucking bar just straight. And so I was really off. And visually, it's kind of tough to do, because you're riveting right where those angles are on the 814, and the ribs are not in there perpendicular to that area, right? So everything is a little bit off, and you're trying to hold a bucking bar in there, and visually there's a bit of an optical illusion, I guess, where you think you're nice and straight on there and you're not, and then you're trying to do this all by yourself. So really helped having somebody else go in there to buck those rivets. Now, the other thing I want to point out is the drawing, and I'll find a picture of that here in just a second. The drawing does not specifically call out which rivets go into that area. Let me show you what I mean. I'm not sure how well you can see this. I'll bring the camera in closer after I finish my little monologue here. But in the drawing, it says for all HS003 to 702 to 814 rivets, use an AN470 AD4-7, so that -7 being the length again. And that's fine for those pieces, but it does not call out specific rivets when you have to include the HS00005 and the HS00006 ribs on there. So that adds, I think those might be like 25 thousandths, right? So that adds about 50 thousandths, 40 thousandths, 50 thousandths worth of thickness on there. And they don't specifically tell you which rivets to use in here. So on the other side, it just says match drill to number 40, or sorry, match drill to number 30. So I was a little bit torn on which rivet to use. All right, the -8 was too long. It was almost 2 times the diameter of the rivet shank. The -7 was a little too short. And I cut one down trying to use that, and it folded over as well. So not to say that that was the problem, but it was also a contributing factor. So if you have a shorter rivet, it's a little bit easier to buck, less chance of that tail folding over on you. The longer they get, the more they tend to go do that. So the AN470 AN470 AD4-7 is really the correct rivet to use there. And the instructions do tell you, right, if you read through all the instructions that they give you, Vans fully admits that, hey, sometimes you're going to kind of be in between rivet sizes. You're better off going with the shorter rivet than you are the longer rivet. So nothing wrong there. Got those rivets installed. Everything is good. I'm going to press forward on the rest of riveting the skeleton today. So hang out. Let's watch and see what we learn. So I got to tell you, those rivets that I've continuously or repeatedly failed to install properly were pretty frustrating. And that was also a point in the day where it's kind of getting towards the end of my day working. And so, a little tired, fatigue is setting in, patience are wearing thin. Backing off that one and moving on to something else was absolutely the right call. So my technical advisor came over here, gave me some great advice that will come into play in the future, and worked really well. So this turned out to be another daunting task. Now, riveting in this aircraft, and as you move along your journey, if you're a first-time builder, or if you can remember back to when you were a first-time builder, I think we all struggle with riveting. I don't know if I really know of anybody that picked up riveting for the first time and said, "Hey, this was easy," and they did it well and didn't have any problems. It's a learned skill, and it's not always an easy one. So in this process, you see, I just had to bring out the DRDT2 to countersink a hole. Apparently one got missed, and so I was one shy. But this is the first step in the instructions of riveting the skeleton. So as you'll see, I started riveting, had some troubles and some struggles, and I picked up a piece of scrap metal and poked a few holes in it and countersunk them. And now I ran over to the vise to do a little bit of practice riveting to hopefully make my life a little bit easier here on the actual part. So this took a long time. I put in a lot of rivets and I drilled out a lot of rivets, and then I put in more rivets and I drilled out the same rivets again and again and again. I bought the practice kits, and I did a number of practice kits. Bought 2 of the Van's light boxes. I did the winglet kit. I did a bunch of other practice pieces, and that was back in like August or September. And I hadn't really touched a rivet gun since. And quite frankly, it's a little bit intimidating. I knew going into this that my rivet skills weren't 100%, but it was time to just dive in and face the music. Either I learn how to rivet or I break a bunch of parts doing so, and then learn how to rivet. So thankfully, nothing went too far south that I had to go buy replacement parts. I will point out one thing that I should have learned previously that I didn't, and I don't know if you guys caught it here while watching the video. At one point in time, I remember watching T-Flight 77, and Tim had some part, and I don't even remember what it was. It might have been his horizontal stabilizer hanging up in his garage, and it fell down. Now, you just may have noticed that I had my skeleton in that shelf above my skin, and it fell down. Luckily, it didn't do any damage or mark up any of the parts, so I got very, very lucky there. But a reminder and a lesson learned that if it can fall down, it will fall down. So be really careful the way you store your parts. Make sure they're up there stable. I put that thing up there, and I knew it was kind of iffy, and I rolled the dice on it, and I lost. But again, thankfully, it didn't do any real damage to my skin or to the part itself. So this is really just going through, the first step is to put in that forward rib, which I believe is the HS707. It's that forward mid-span rib, and we're starting on the left side here. And once you put that in, you get all the rivets in. I think it tells you to rivet one side of it, right? And then it tells you to go put in the 706 rib, which is the very end one, and then the 708 rib, which is the mid-aft rib. So it tells you to go put those things in there along with, I think I can't remember if I think the spar goes in there as well. But at any rate, it tells you to go rivet these or cleco these things in there for a little bit of added strength and support while you go clecoing down your merry way. I think I'm not yet to that stage where it tells you to put all those things in there to rivet the back side of these things. I added it in here just to help kind of hold that skin together a little bit, so I didn't have to fight against it as much. I will say I started off very early in this project without the little wooden jig that is here to hold the skin. And then when I made my first one, I made the openings way too big, so it wasn't really holding the skin closed in the shape that it needed to be in. And I made like a second set that I married up against the first ones, so it can be a little bit more
similar to the shape of the actual rib. So just start from the very beginning with one of these, friends. You can't really do this job without it. In fact, you probably shouldn't, because it'll be pretty problematic. So the rest of this assembly is pretty straightforward. You start with, again, the 707, that leading edge mid rib, and you rivet one side of it, and then the instructions tell you to put in the 706, which is that outboard end rib, and the 708, which is the mid aft rib, and then go rivet the other side of the 707. So once that's firmly in place, you'll see actually, I don't know if you will see, I think it gets just cut out from my editing, that you remove the 708 and the 706, and then you install the whole skeleton, and that's what I'm about to do now, right? So I did a little bit of off-camera work here, and I think the next time you'll see it come back with all the pieces installed there. So when you do that, there's nothing too complicated, right? It's pretty straightforward from this point. I think we talked about the blind rivets that go in the center there to secure the 707 and 708 ribs to the spar, and then you just work your way through, putting in a bunch of clecos and removing them one by one to put in rivets and buck the rivets. On the very end of the very end outboard edge, you have that 706 rib, which has two AN 470-4 raised head rivets. So nothing too complicated there. They're easy to get to. Just take your gun, be careful that you're straight on those things and not angled too much, and go ahead and drive those. And that's it. I put this down on the floor for a minute there. It was a little bit easier to work with back here on the workbench. Now dealing with those end rivets, those -4s that are using the raised head. And then the rest of the instructions are just proceed through to rivet everything on the spar. Now, there are some areas, pay close attention to your instructions. There's areas on the inboard side, top edge of the screen. So the top side of the skin, inboard edge, there are some rivets that you do not want to install, because those are going to be for the fairing when you do your horizontal stab to the body join. So pay close attention to the instructions, mark those things out so you don't do those. And you may have noticed the cameo appearance by my daughter there to help me with something. Don't even remember why she was there, to be honest, but holding something in place, I'm sure. So now I'm going to turn over to live action Jeff for the rest of this.
Well, it has taken me way too long. I forget how many hours, I wasn't even keeping track, to buck 6 rivets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 rivets. And some of those, I'll be honest, had to get replaced with oops rivets. An oops rivet, for those of you that don't know, is one size larger in diameter with the same size head. So when you look at the rivet row, they all look like -3 rivets, but the shank of a few of those are -4s. So, man, it's just lessons learned with a rivet gun. I will tell you, in the very top rivet of that rib, when drilling out one of the bad rivets that I set, I bent that flange in, and that was well after I had riveted a bunch of these things, that I was not going to drill the whole thing out so I can straighten out that little piece of rib. But you can't leave it away from the skin, right? It has to sit flush to the skin. You can't leave it sitting out like that. The rivet will then swell up between those two pieces of material, and that's just not going to work. So that can be a little difficult to deal with. What I did ultimately was cut a little block of wood and wedged it in there to hold that flange up against the skin, and then got in there with my bucking bar and set that rivet, and now all is good. So just the trials and tribulations of bucking rivets.
That's all for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in and watching. Like, subscribe, share, and until next time, Jeff and Paper Gary out.